The carving knife stood perfectly vertical in the Thanksgiving turkey, defying gravity, defying reason, and from somewhere in the walls of the old Whitmore house, a voice whispered two words that made Sarah's blood run cold. Eat it. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel of True Terror. Before we sink our teeth into tonight's deeply unsettling story, I need to know, where in the world are you watching from right now? Are you home alone with family? Drop your location in the comments. And listen, if you make it through this entire story without getting chills, you're braver than I am. Go ahead and smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring that notification bell, because we've got horror stories coming your way every week that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about family gatherings. Fair warning, you might never look at Thanksgiving dinner the same way again. Now settle in, turn up the volume, and whatever you do, don't stop listening until the very end. Trust me on this one. Sarah Whitmore had never wanted the house. When her Uncle Richard died alone in that sprawling Victorian estate outside of Brattleboro, Vermont, she'd been perfectly content to let someone else deal with the creaking hallways, the outdated plumbing, and the decades of accumulated memories that hung in every room like cobwebs. But Uncle Richard's will had been specific, almost desperately so. The house went to Sarah, and only Sarah. No one else in the family was even mentioned. "He always liked you best," her mother had said over the phone, her voice tight with poorly concealed resentment. "God knows why. You barely visited him." That was true. Sarah had been to the Whitmore house exactly 3 times in her 34 years. Once as a child of 7, when her parents had dragged her there for a stiff, uncomfortable Christmas. Once at 16 for a funeral she barely remembered. And once, at 23, when Uncle Richard had invited her, specifically insisting he needed to tell her something important. She'd gone reluctantly and spent an awkward weekend watching her uncle stare at her across the dinner table with rheumy eyes that seemed to be perpetually on the verge of tears. He'd never told her what was so important. Instead, he'd asked strange questions. Did she hear anything unusual in the house? Did the walls ever seem to speak? Had she noticed anything odd about the dining room? Sarah had chalked it up to old age and loneliness. Now, standing in the lawyer's office on a gray October afternoon, she wondered if there had been more to it. "There is one condition," the lawyer said, adjusting his glasses. He was young, maybe 30, and clearly uncomfortable. "Your uncle specified that you must spend Thanksgiving in the house, not just any night Thanksgiving specifically, and you must prepare a traditional meal." "I'm sorry, what? It's unusual, I know, but the will is ironclad. If you don't fulfill this condition by Thanksgiving of this year, the house goes to the Historical Society and you forfeit any claim to the estate." Sarah laughed, a short, sharp sound. "That's insane." "Why would he? I don't know, Miss Whitmore. I only know what the will says." "He left you a letter." The lawyer slid an envelope across the desk. It was yellowed, sealed with red wax, and her name was written across the front in Uncle Richard's spidery handwriting. She didn't open it in the office. She waited until she was back in her apartment in Boston with a glass of wine in her hand and the city lights glittering outside her window. Even then, her fingers trembled as she broke the seal. "Dear Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm dead, and that means you're the last one left. The last Whitmore who might be strong enough to break the cycle. I know you think I'm crazy. Your mother certainly did. But what's in that house is real, Sarah. It's been real since 1883, when your great-great-grandfather made a deal he should never have made. The voice in the walls will speak to you. It always speaks on Thanksgiving. Whatever you do, don't listen. Don't eat what it offers. And for God's sake, don't let the knife stand. I'm sorry I couldn't warn you properly when you visited. It wouldn't let me. It never lets us tell. Be careful, Sarah. And if you can burn the house down." Uncle Richard. Sarah read the letter 3 times, then poured herself another glass of wine. Clearly, Uncle Richard had lost his mind in those final years. The voice in the walls. "A deal in 1883. It was the stuff of bad horror movies. but she needed the money. The house was worth at least $800,000, maybe more. All she had to do was spend one night there and cook a turkey. How hard could that be? She called the lawyer the next morning and agreed to the terms. The Whitmore house looked even more imposing than Sarah remembered. It sat at the end of a long gravel driveway surrounded by ancient oaks that had mostly shed their leaves. 3 stories of weathered gray siding with a wraparound porch and windows that caught the late afternoon light like watchful eyes. The whole place had an air of patient waiting, as if it had known she would come. Sarah pulled her car up to the front steps and killed the engine. For a long moment, she just sat there staring at the house. A cold November wind rattled the bare branches overhead. "Just one night," she said aloud. "Cook a turkey, stay until morning, and never come back." The front door key had been in the envelope from the lawyer. It turned smoothly in the lock, and the door swung open with a low creak that seemed to echo through the entire house. The smell hit her first. Not decay exactly, but age. Dust and old wood and something else, something faintly sweet and rotten that made her nose wrinkle. The entryway was dark, the afternoon light barely penetrating the grimy windows. She fumbled for a light switch and found one. A chandelier overhead flickered to life, casting weak yellow light over the space. The house had been shut up for months since Uncle Richard's death in April. Sheets covered most of the furniture, giving the rooms a ghostly appearance. Sarah walked slowly through the first floor, her footsteps loud on the hardwood floors. Living room, library, study, kitchen. The kitchen was surprisingly large, with an old gas stove and countertops that might have been updated sometime in the 1970 seconds. A door led to a walk-in pantry and another to the basement. She didn't open the basement door. And then there was the dining room. She'd saved it for last, though she wasn't sure why. It was just a room after all. But as she stood in the doorway, she felt something shift in her chest, a tightness, a warning. The dining room was dominated by a long oak table that could easily seat 12. Above it hung another chandelier, this one more ornate with crystal drops that tinkled softly in the air current from the open door. A china cabinet stood against one wall filled with antique dishes. And at the far end of the room, a portrait hung over the fireplace. Sarah stepped closer. The portrait showed a man in his 50s with dark hair and darker eyes wearing the formal attire of the late 1800s. His expression was stern, almost angry, and there was something about the way the artist had painted his eyes. They seemed to follow her as she moved. A small brass plaque at the bottom of the frame read Ezekiel Whitmore, 1847 to 1921. Her great-great-grandfather, the one Uncle Richard had mentioned in his letter. Sarah shivered and turned away. The light was fading outside, and she needed to unpack the car before full darkness fell. She'd stopped at a grocery store on the way and bought everything for a traditional Thanksgiving meal: a 12-pound turkey, potatoes, cranberries, rolls, pumpkin pie, the works. If she was going to fulfill Uncle Richard's bizarre requirement, she might as well do it properly. It took 3 trips to bring everything in. By the time she finished, night had fallen completely, and the house seemed to press in around her. She turned on every light she could find, but there were still shadows in the corners, still dark spaces where the light didn't quite reach. She'd brought an overnight bag with clothes and toiletries. She'd also brought her laptop and phone, though she wasn't sure if she'd get good reception out here. The house felt very far from civilization, even though the nearest town was only 10 miles away. Sarah ate a quick dinner of crackers and cheese, standing at the kitchen counter. Then she did something she immediately regretted. She started exploring the upper floors. The second floor held 6 bedrooms, all of them shut up and musty. She chose the one that seemed least depressing, a corner room with windows facing south and west. The bed was already made up, though the sheets smelled like mothballs. She stripped them off and replaced them with ones she'd brought from home. The third floor was worse. The ceiling sloped down with the roofline, and the rooms were smaller, more cramped. This had been servants' quarters once, probably. Now they were just empty spaces, filled with broken furniture and cardboard boxes that Sarah had no intention of examining. She was halfway back to the stairs when she heard it. A whisper so faint she almost convinced herself it was just the wind. But there was no wind. The house was shut up tight. She froze, listening. Nothing. Just the creak of old wood and the hum of the refrigerator 2 floors below. "You're being ridiculous," she said aloud. Her voice sounded small in the darkness. She went back downstairs, checked that all the doors were locked, and tried to settle in for the night. She'd planned to do some work on her laptop. She was a freelance graphic designer and always had projects to catch up on, but she couldn't concentrate. The house was too quiet. Or maybe not quiet enough. She kept hearing things, soft thumps, distant creaks, the sound of something sliding across wood. Old houses make noise, she told herself. That's all it is. At 11 o'clock, she gave up on work and went to bed. She left the lamp on. Sarah woke to gray dawn light and the certain knowledge that she wasn't alone in the house. She lay very still in the unfamiliar bed, listening. Footsteps, no. Breathing, maybe. Or maybe just the sound of her own heart pounding in her ears. She grabbed her phone. 6:30 in the morning. Thanksgiving Day. "Get up," she muttered. "Cook the damn turkey. Get out of here." The house seemed different in daylight, less oppressive, more just sad and old. Sarah showered quickly in the ancient bathroom down the hall, dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt, and headed downstairs. The turkey needed to go in the oven by 8 if it was going to be ready by mid-afternoon. She'd never actually cooked a Thanksgiving dinner before. She usually went to her mother's or to a friend's or just ordered takeout. But how hard could it be? She had her phone. She could look up instructions. She preheated the oven and got to work preparing the bird. It was cold and slippery and vaguely obscene. She seasoned it the way the recipe on her phone said, to stuff some aromatics in the cavity, and wrestled it into a roasting pan. Into the oven it went. Sarah stood back, feeling absurdly proud of herself. See easy. She'd have this done by 3 o'clock and be back in Boston by midnight. She made coffee and started on the side dishes. Mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce from a can because she wasn't a monster. The kitchen began to smell good, normal, like Thanksgiving was supposed to smell. By noon, she was actually enjoying herself. Music played from her phone, classic rock loud enough to fill the house with something other than silence. She sang along badly and danced a little while stirring the gravy. This wasn't so bad. Uncle Richard had been crazy paranoid in his old age. There was nothing wrong with this house, it was just old. The turkey was browning nicely. She checked it every 30 minutes, basting it the way the recipe instructed. At 2 o'clock, she stuck a thermometer in and confirmed it was almost done. Another 30 minutes, maybe. Sarah set the dining room table. She used the china from the cabinet, delicate plates with blue flowers, probably worth a fortune. She found silver cutlery in a drawer, tarnished but still usable, crystal glasses, cloth napkins. She even set a place for herself at the head of the table right under Ezekiel Whitmore's portrait. At 2:30, the thermometer read 165 degrees. Perfect. Sarah pulled the turkey out and set it on the counter to rest. It looked beautiful, golden brown and glistening. She was just reaching for the carving knife when she felt it. The temperature in the kitchen dropped at least 10 degrees. Her breath misted in front of her face, and someone whispered right behind her ear, "Eat it." Sarah spun around. The kitchen was empty. "Hello," her voice came out, strangled. "Is someone here?" No answer. But the cold remained, and now she could see her breath with every exhalation. She backed toward the door, her heart hammering. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. The whisper came again from a different direction this time. Eat it. Eat it now. Who's there? Sarah's hands were shaking. She pulled out her phone, but her fingers were so numb from the sudden cold that she nearly dropped it. The whisper multiplied. Now it was coming from everywhere. The walls, the ceiling, the floor. Dozens of voices all saying the same thing. Eat it, eat it, eat it. Sarah ran. She made it as far as the dining room before she stopped gasping. Because the dining room was even worse. Every light was off, though she'd left them on. The only illumination came from candles, dozens of them on the table, on the mantel, and the chandelier. She hadn't lit any candles. And the portrait of Ezekiel Whitmore was different. In the painting, he was smiling now. A horrible, knowing smile that showed too many teeth. No, Sarah whispered. No, this isn't real. She turned to run back to the kitchen, but the door slammed shut in her face. She grabbed the handle and pulled, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers grew louder. Eat it. Eat it. Eat it. Sarah pressed her hands over her ears, but it didn't help. The voices weren't coming from outside. They were inside her head. She was sobbing now, sliding down to the floor with her back against the locked door. Please. Please stop. The voices stopped. The sudden silence was almost worse than the whispers. Sarah slowly lowered her hands and looked around the dining room. The candles still burned. The portrait still showed that terrible smile. And someone was sitting at the far end of the table. It was a man in old-fashioned clothing. Dark suit, white shirt, the same outfit from the portrait. But his face was wrong, gray and waxy, with eyes that were too dark, too empty. Ezekiel Whitmore. "Hello, Sarah," he said. His voice was dry like paper crumbling. "I've been waiting for you." Sarah couldn't move, couldn't breathe. This wasn't possible. This wasn't real. Ezekiel stood up slowly, his movements stiff and jerky. "Don't be afraid. We're family after all. You're dead." The words came out as barely more than a whisper. "Yes." He smiled that horrible smile again. "I've been dead for over a century, but I'm still here. I'll always be here." He walked toward her, and Sarah scrambled backward until she hit the wall. There was nowhere to go. "Let me tell you a story," Ezekiel said, stopping a few feet away. "It was Thanksgiving 1883. I had everything a man could want: wealth, property, respect, but I wanted more. I always wanted more." Sarah's phone was still clutched in her hand. She tried to dial 911, but her fingers wouldn't work properly. "A man came to my door that day, a stranger. He said he could give me everything I desired, success beyond measure, life extended far beyond its natural span. All I had to do was make one small sacrifice." "What sacrifice?" Sarah heard herself ask. Ezekiel's smile widened. "A Thanksgiving meal. Every year, one meal shared with him. And in return, I would prosper." "You made a deal with the devil." "Devil, perhaps. He never said what he was. But yes, I accepted his terms. And for 38 years, I honored them. Every Thanksgiving, I prepared a feast and invited him to dine with me. And I prospered beyond my wildest dreams." Sarah was starting to understand, and the understanding made her feel sick. "What happened? I got greedy," Ezekiel said simply. "I thought I could outsmart him. On Thanksgiving of 1921, I prepared the meal, as always. But I didn't eat. I refused to share with him. I thought that would break the contract, free me from my obligation." He laughed, a sound like wind through a cemetery. I was wrong. He was displeased. He told me that the deal couldn't be broken, that if I wouldn't fulfill my end, then my descendants would. Every generation on Thanksgiving, one of my bloodline would have to prepare the feast, and they would have to eat. Or what Sarah whispered, Ezekiel's expression turned sad. Or he takes them, body and soul, and he binds them here in this house to wait for the next one. Understanding crashed over Sarah like a wave. Uncle Richard. He didn't fulfill it, did he? Richard tried to resist. He prepared the meal but refused to eat, and so he joined us. Ezekiel gestured around the room, and for the first time, Sarah realized they weren't alone. Shapes stood in the shadows, transparent, flickering like candle flames, but definitely there. Men and women in clothing from different eras, all of them staring at her with empty, hungry eyes. All of them are Whitmores, Ezekiel said. All of them tried to break the deal. And now they're trapped here, hungry forever, waiting for the one meal they can never eat. Sarah's mind was racing. This couldn't be happening. But the ghosts were there. The cold was there. Ezekiel was there. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Isn't it obvious you have to complete the ritual? Go into the kitchen, carve the turkey, sit at this table and eat. Share the meal with him." "With who?" "The thing you're made the deal with." "Yes. And if I refuse," Ezekiel's expression hardened, "then you'll join us. And the obligation will pass to the next Whitmore, and the next, until someone finally gives him what he's owed." Sarah looked at the ghosts surrounding her. Some of them looked young, too young. "How many of you are there?" 17, Ezekiel said. 17 Whitmores who refused. "You'll be the 18th. Or I could just leave. Walk out the door right now." She tried. She ran for the front door, but it wouldn't open. None of the doors would open. The windows wouldn't break, no matter how hard she hit them. She was trapped. By the time she made it back to the dining room, she was crying again. "You can't leave," Ezekiel said gently. "Not until sunrise. Those are the rules. You're here, in this house, on Thanksgiving. Now you have to choose, fulfill the obligation, or join us." Sarah sank into one of the dining room chairs. Her mind felt numb. "What happens if I eat? What happens to me? Nothing. You walk out of here tomorrow morning free and clear. The obligation is fulfilled for another year. Another year. This happens every year until someone breaks the cycle." "Yes. How do I break it?" Ezekiel was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he said, "I don't know. I've been dead for over 100 years, and I still don't know." Sarah put her head in her hands. This was insane. All of it was insane. But the alternative, spending eternity trapped in this house as a hungry ghost, was worse. "What if I don't finish the meal?" she asked. "What if I just take one bite? He'll know, and he won't accept it." "What's he like?" The thing you made the deal with. Ezekiel's waxy face paled even further. "You don't want to know." Sarah walked back to the kitchen like a woman going to her execution. The turkey was still on the counter, still golden and perfect. The kitchen lights flickered as she entered, and the temperature dropped again. Her breath misted in front of her face. The carving knife lay beside the turkey. It was old, with a bone handle and a long, thin blade. Sarah picked it up with trembling hands. "Just do it," she whispered to herself. "Just do it and get out of here." She positioned the knife to carve the breast meat. But as soon as the blade touched the turkey's skin, something happened. The knife jerked in her hand, twisting, pulling upward. Sarah tried to hold on, but it was like the knife had a will of its own. It yanked free from her grip and drove itself point first into the turkey, and stayed there, standing perfectly vertical, defying gravity. Sarah stared at it, her mind refusing to process what she was seeing. The knife stood upright in the turkey, not wobbling, not falling, just standing. The whispers started again all around her. Eat it, eat it, eat it. I'm trying, Sarah shouted. I'm trying to carve it. She reached for the knife, but as soon as her fingers touched the handle, pain shot through her hand like an electric shock. She jerked back with a cry. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, more angry. Sarah looked around desperately. There had to be another knife. She yanked open drawers, scattering utensils across the floor. But every knife she found, every single one, leaped from her hands the moment she picked it up and stabbed into the turkey, joining the first one. Within minutes, the bird looked like a pincushion bristling with blades of every size. And still the whispers, "Eat it, eat it, eat it, eat it. I can't carve it," Sarah screamed. How am I supposed to eat it if I can't carve it? The temperature dropped even further. Frost formed on the windows. Sarah's tears froze on her cheeks. And then a new voice spoke deeper than the whispers resonating through the walls of the house. With your hands, Sarah spun around. The kitchen was empty, but she could feel something there. A presence, massive and ancient and hungry. Who are you? She whispered. You know who I am. Ezekiel promised me a feast. Every year a feast. I've been waiting, Sarah. Waiting for someone strong enough. Someone hungry enough. I'm not hungry. Laughter echoed through the house, shaking the foundations. Everyone is hungry. Everyone wants. That's what Ezekiel understood. That's what makes the deal so sweet. Sarah backed away from the turkey, from the knives protruding from it like some twisted sculpture. I won't do it. I won't eat. Then you'll stay. Like the others, forever hungry, forever wanting, forever mine. The ghosts appeared in the kitchen doorway, all 17 of them pressing closed, their empty eyes fixed on her. Please, one of them whispered. A woman, maybe 30, in a dress from the 1950 seconds. Please just do it. We're so hungry. If you eat, maybe he'll let us rest. That's not true, Sarah said, looking at Ezekiel. Is it? Even if I do this, they're still trapped. Ezekiel looked away. He lied to you, Sarah said, understanding dawning. You all thought that if the next generation fulfilled the obligation, you'd be free. But that's not how it works, is it? The presence in the room grew heavier, more oppressive. Clever girl, yes. They're mine. They'll always be mine. But you could still walk away. All you have to do is eat. Sarah looked at the turkey, at the knives, at the ghosts, and she made a decision. No. The word hung in the air. What did you say? I said no. I won't eat it. I won't be part of this anymore. The presence roared, a sound of pure fury that shattered every window in the house. The ghosts screamed. The candles in the dining room flared and went out. Sarah stood her ground, even though every instinct screamed at her to run. You can trap me here if you want. You can add me to your collection. But I won't give you what you want. And neither will the next Whitmore, or the one after that, because I'm going to make sure they know the truth. You can't tell them. I won't allow it. Then you'll have to kill me. Really kill me. Not just trap my ghost here. And if you do that, the deal is broken anyway, isn't it? Because there won't be anyone left to fulfill it. Silence. Long and terrible. Then you're bluffing. Sarah pulled her phone from her pocket. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold it, but she managed to open the voice memo app. I'm recording this. Everything. Your voice. My refusal. All of it. And I'm gonna email it to every Whitmore I can find. They'll know the truth. They'll know they don't have to give in. That won't save you. Maybe not, but it'll save them. The thing in the house raged. Furniture flew through the air. The walls shook. The ghosts wailed and flickered, fading in and out of existence. But Sarah held on to her phone, held on to her decision, and refused to break. Midnight came. Then 1 a.m. Then 2. The presence pressed down on her, whispering terrible things, showing her visions of what eternity in the house would be like. Hunger, isolation, madness. But Sarah noticed something. The ghosts were changing. The woman in the 1950 seconds dress was becoming more solid, more real. She was looking around in wonder, touching her own arms, as if surprised to find them there. "What's happening?" Sarah whispered. Ezekiel understood.